I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to Hillary Clinton, based on your speech this morning, you seem to have learned from the master.
Literally, it was like a pledging conference.
Literally.
We literally had to break into a meeting.
Literally. That's figuratively. Literally.
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 Literally. Literally.
On the show tonight, literally, Jeb's Pecan Valley and former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. But first, the big Iran deal rally. Some sort of vote is going to happen in the House of Representatives on the Iran nuclear pact. But before that, today, three major presidential candidates made their cases inside the Beltway about the agreement. Two of them, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, appeared at a Capitol Hill event to oppose the deal. The other, Hillary Clinton, gave a more subdued speech at the Brookings Institute expressing support.
This Iranian nuclear deal is catastrophic.
Never, ever, ever in my life have I seen any transaction so incompetently negotiated as our deal with Iran.
Those of us who have been out there on the diplomatic front lines know that diplomacy is not the pursuit of perfection. It's the balancing of risk. And on balance, the far riskier course right now would be to walk away.
Over $100 billion will flow directly to Iran, to the Ayatollah Khamenei. And billions of those dollars will go directly to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to radical Islamic terrorists across the world.
They rip us off. They take our money. They make us look like fools. And now they're back to being who they really are. They don't want Israel to survive.
I, too, am deeply concerned about Iranian aggression and the need to confront it.
So, big outdoor rally. Cruz invited Trump to come speak. Clinton was obviously more subdued. Tons of media focus on Trump, as you saw there a little bit. Who won the day between those three weighing in on this issue, which is a done deal inside the Beltway because the Senate's not going to stop?
There is exactly one president or potential president in that group, and that president is Hillary Rodham Clinton, who has had a lot of problems politically. We've hammered her on a lot of fronts, but you hear her discussing international relations, this deal, trying to allay the concerns of Israel, trying to talk about what kind of regional alliances would be necessary to as she puts it, distrust but verify, how she would work, how she would be aggressive. Everything she said sounded like commander-in-chief. The other two sounded like showboating clowns.
If the goal is the White House, she clearly had the most sort of somber and presidential style speech. I think Ted Cruz helped himself a ton today. He was overshadowed by Trump in terms of media coverage, without a doubt. But someone is going to position themselves to be the Trump alternative at some point. And Ted Cruz now, in fundraising and organizing and in his whole command of national security issues rhetorically, he had a very good day.
Well, look, notably around our office, people were pointing out the fact that it seemed as though Cruz had paid close attention to Trump's troubles with Hugh Hewitt, because he was citing the names of leaders in the region that Trump didn't know who they were last week, he's never going to attack Trump for all the reasons we understand, but he was trying to put some distance between himself and Trump today and say, you know, we may be going for the same voters, but I actually have a greater command of substance than this guy does.
There are a number of Republicans who, if they end up in the general election against Hillary Clinton, are going to have trouble matching up with that degree of lofty, serious, learned rhetoric, particularly national security issues. Those guys, though, were speaking at an outside rally with Sarah Palin and others, so they didn't have quite the same type of audience.
Slightly different deal. Okay, it has been a big 18 hours for John Ellis Bush, who followed his appearance on the debut of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert last night with a big-time tax proposal today. The tax plan cometh. Cut individual rates from 7 brackets to 3. Cut the corporate rate from 35 to 20%. Cap deductions at 2% of gross income, tax carried interest as ordinary income, and let businesses write off expenses immediately. Mark, here's my question to you. Is this just a garden variety Republican tax plan like every other we hear and see time after time, or is there some special sauce here?
This is both politically shrewd and I think legislatively shrewd if Bush gets elected president. There's stuff in here that Democrats could support as part of a compromise. There's plenty in here like eliminating the death tax that they will not like, the estate tax. But there's no doubt that doing things like doubling the standard deduction, expanding the income tax credit, taxing carried interest, getting rid of certain ability to deduct things like state and local taxes, home mortgage. There's a lot in here that people in the center could like.
Yes, it's basically Romney plus some little supply side over here, a little populism over here,
more than a little populism. The thing's not scored. We don't know exactly.
Well, that's the key.
But there are plenty of winners.
That's the key.
Here's the difference. There are plenty of winners in this plan who are middle and lower income.
We don't at this point, though, know how much it's going to cost, how he's going to pay for it. And that was always the key with the Romney plan, was once you start making those kinds of cuts.
Romney's plan was skewed much more.
But still, the question then becomes, if you're going to make this deficit neutral, which presumably Bush will say it is, there's going to have to be cuts. Who's going to bear the brunt of those cuts? Those are all the unknown questions.
Well,
on paper right now, though, it's a good start. We got to see where the details are.
If you look at who takes hits, again, we don't know the scoring. If you look at who takes hits, the wealthy are going to pay more under this plan in a lot of cases.
That's true.
Not all wealthy, but a lot of wealthy people pay more, and a lot of middle class and working class people will pay less.
But then the question
is not a traditional Republican tax plan.
The question then is whether middle class and working class people take cuts in programs that benefit them in order to pay for the rest of the cuts in the plan.
Unless it ends up being revenue neutral. Depends on how they jimmy around all the different things. What's impressive to me about this plan is it expands the base and it lowers the rates, and that within the Republican context is a big advantage, but it's got some general election appeal as well. All right, last night, before he released his tax plan in full, Jeb Bush appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He taped a little bit for the television program, and then he did one of those newfangled web extras. Here's a little bit of the comedy business from that.
Without in any way diminishing your love for your brother, in what ways do you politically differ from your brother George?
I'm obviously younger.
You're younger.
Much better looking.
Policy, though. Any policy? Yeah. Any policy differences?
I think my brother probably didn't control the Republican Congress spending. I think he should have brought the hammer down on the Republicans when they were spending way too much, because our brand is limited government.
Long interview, some funny, some not. Overall, do you think Jeb Bush passed his Colbert audition?
Barely. He emerged unsinged, unscathed. He did not come out of there bleeding or bloodied. I don't think he knocked it out of the park. That was not a performance on that stage that anybody said, wow, that's a new Jeb Bush. Boy, he really killed it tonight. But he survived.
Yeah. I thought there were times he seemed a little nervous. I thought he didn't quite know whether he was supposed to be straight man only or make his own jokes. I agree with you. He wasn't great, but it's not a problem. But I will tell you, you're going to have to compete in this contest with the front runner, who is a star on television.
Yes,
and that was not a star turn.
It was not a star turn. Again, I have sympathy for him. I've been on the television with Stephen Colbert. It's a new program. No one knew what Colbert was going to be like. Totally. It's hard enough when we knew what Colbert was going to be like to sit across from him. Sit across from him last night, very tricky. If I were Bush, I wouldn't have gone on the debut show. I would have wanted to wait a week to see what he was going to be like.
My general policy is don't go on a show you haven't seen. In this case,
correct.
He couldn't have seen it, but I thought he did just fine. But he's not going to help him much.
He's going to have to up his game in the pop culture primary if he's going to be toe-to-toe with Donald Trump.
He's a funny guy often, but like
very
his brother,
dry.
But like his brother, he can be a little self-conscious in public, and I think you saw that last night. Because again, show you've never been on, Hollywood. He knew there were going to be lots of people watching. It's a lot of pressure.
Colbert's loosey-goosey, and Jeb is not loosey-goosey. Okay, coming up, Martin Joseph O'Malley unplugged. That is, if he brought his guitar. We'll be right back.
Washington, D.C. is holding us back. Giving bureaucrats more power over the economy is only going to make things worse. That's the problem. The way we bring jobs back to America is to take power out of Washington and give it back to the American people by allowing them to have more of their hard-earned money.
Today, Jeb Bush released a tax plan, and nobody has been inside and out of this thing more than Bloomberg tax policy reporter Rich Rubin. Rich joins us from Washington. Thanks for doing this, Rich. I want to start right off at the top with you. Some news. I know you've been talking to people with the campaign. It seems like there may now be a price tag on this plan that you can give us some reporting on. Go right ahead.
Yeah, the first estimate from economists who've worked with the Bush team is that this would cost about $3.4 trillion over 10 years. Throw in some dynamic scoring and some regulatory reform, and it's about $1.2 trillion, they say.
Okay, that's a large number for sure. What else about this plan surprises you or strikes you having read it about 25 times today?
There's a couple things that are neat. I think one is the secondary earner provision that he's talking about, where if you have a two-earner couple, the person who makes less can now file separately under this plan and not pay tax at the higher person's rate. And like you guys were talking about before, it's got this mix of some populism, some traditional Republican stuff. There's something for everybody in here.
Rich, what's in here that is against current Republican Party orthodoxy on tax policy?
Carried interest, number one. It's small dollars, $15 to $20 billion over 10, but it's an important principle. Secondly, the move toward full expensing isn't really against Republican policy per se, but it shows that he's not even trying to make his tax plan revenue neutral. He's trying to get out of the box that Romney got himself into.
Rich, give us the biggest winners and biggest losers under this plan.
Biggest winners are people who are paying really high effective tax rates right now. People who are making a lot of money. LeBron, right? LeBron's tax rate is 39.6%. It's now 28% on a lot of income. The biggest losers are people in high tax states. So people who live in New York, New Jersey, who won't be able to deduct those taxes anymore. They're in that middle to high middle income range, $100,000 to $200,000. They're going to lose net on some of what Jeb is proposing here.
All right, Rich Rubin in Washington, thanks so much for talking to us about the plan. Joining us now to talk a little bit more about it, the Bush plan, Martin O'Malley, former Maryland governor, Baltimore mayor, now Democratic presidential candidate. We're not going to ask you to endorse the Bush plan.
And I didn't know I was invited here to talk about the Bush plan.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about it and then about you. There's some things in here, as Rich pointed out, that will benefit the wealthy, and it is not revenue neutral. And I know you want a plan that would redistribute, but there are a lot of things in here. I just want to ask you some of the things that are more populist, more centrist. Doubling the deduction, the standard deduction. Does that seem like a good idea?
Well, it could be if you do it in a progressive and fair way. I like the notion of raising the earned income tax credit. I did it twice as governor in Maryland. I like the idea of the fig leaf of the doing away with the carried interest deduction. But overall, the real question you have to ask about the Bush plan is it good for our country? Is it good for our country?
Which parts of it aren't good?
I think the parts that aren't good are when it costs $1.2 trillion over time, and the vast majority of it goes to LeBron and the other wealthiest people. It's not the wealthy people of our country who are hurting. It's the 70% of us who are earning the same or less than we were 12 years ago.
Their rate would go down, but they'd lose some deductions. The state and local tax deduction, the home mortgage deduction would be scaled back. Is that a good trade-off, lowered rates and scale back some of the deductions, broaden the base, but eliminate some of the...
Yeah, most of what I know about this, I've seen in the last, the several, in your reporting. But it seems to me that aside from a couple of little fig leaves that masquerade as to put the word populism on the front of it, it sounds like more of Ronald Reagan. Government is the problem. We have to do away with our government wherever we can. But you know what? As a people, we've never been able to give our kids a better future with more prosperity without making our country stronger at the same time. And so I think this plan, from what I've seen of it, appears to be more of the selling America short, defunding the sort of things we actually need to do more of to give our children greater opportunities than we've had. So I'm looking forward to putting out a tax plan of my own and doing it in a way that's much more in keeping with America's success and American capitalism, whereby we ask the wealthiest among us to do a little more so that we can make our country stronger, make the investments in infrastructure, make higher education more affordable for more people.
We're going to have you on for a whole other block after we take a break, but I want to ask you real quick. The world's facing kind of a refugee crisis right now. A lot of candidates being asked about what they think about the United States' role should be. A couple of your Democratic rivals have been relatively cautious and timid in terms of what they've said about that. What say you?
I believe that we should step up as we have before as a nation. I believe that our greatest strength as a people comes from our principles. And in the past, we have stepped up whenever there was a refugee crisis like this. I believe that we should take the 65,000 refugees that have been recommended by the international organizations. And in a nation like ours with 320 million, that's like accommodating 6 more people in a baseball stadium that already holds 32,000 people. We're capable of doing this. And what's more, John, we can't really lead in a credible way in the world if we hide from events like that.
And do you think that's what Secretary Clinton, Senator Sanders are doing with their responses, their rather more cautious response to this?
Yeah,
hiding?
There's a lot of xenophobia in the world. There's a lot of There's a lot of hatred being spewed, even from some in the, who are running for president, the Republican Party, Donald Trump, in case anybody missed the analogy. And I think sometimes as Democrats, we are too cautious in the face of that xenophobia. We need to speak boldly about the deepest truths of our nation. And if we do that, there is a font of goodwill that can be summoned forth. That's what we did in my own state with regard to the Central American kids coming from Honduras and Guatemala. And we accommodated more of those kids than any other state in the union, and lots of people stepped up.
All right, we got more time with you after we come back after this little break and word from our sponsors.
And now's the time we get to know just a little bit better the former Maryland Governor, Martin O'Malley, also a Democratic presidential candidate. And we're going to do it by having you walk this wall. It's the only wall on television long enough for Donald Trump.
Wow.
Here we go. So we're going to show you some pictures from your past and ask you to just talk a little bit about them. And first up is a picture of you and your parents about 1965 in Maryland. What were you like as a little kid, and what were your parents like?
I was adorable. I was the third of 6 kids. I was the oldest boy. I had 2 older sisters, and my mom, Tom and Barbara O'Malley, 2 of the nicest, most compassionate and patriotic people God ever put on the planet. My mom flew in the Civil Air Patrol in Fort Wayne, Indiana. My dad flew 33 missions over Japan in a B-24 Liberator and went to college only because of the GI Bill. So,
did the O'Malleys want for anything? Did you have family vacations, expensive toys? What did you have as a kid?
You know, we didn't do a lot of vacations. Sometimes we would go to the beach for a long weekend or something. I can only remember one time where we actually went for the extended week, but no, we wanted for nothing.
Did all the kids have their own rooms?
No. In that little house in Bethesda, Maryland, we had 3 bedrooms and 6 kids.
Okay. You look good. You look good in those coveralls, by the way. You might want to get a pair of those for you now.
It's very Iowa. All right, let's go to the next one.
We're going to skip forward about 19 years now. There you are.
Boy.
San Francisco in 1984. What's going on in that picture?
We're all waiting around, I think, for the Democratic Convention at Moscone Center.
That would be you up there on the far left, correct?
Yeah, so that's me.
That is you.
And those are some other people, Doug Wilson, Trevor Cornwell, others who all worked on Gary Hart's campaign in 1984.
So this is how you got your start really in politics, right? The Hart campaign.
Yeah,
working in Iowa.
Yeah, I had this reaction to Ronald Reagan, and I wanted to work for somebody that would defeat him. And I thought that a candidate who spoke to where our country's headed, a new generation, was the way to go. So I started working for Gary Hart in December 1982 when it was time to go out to Iowa. I did Scott County and Davenport for Hart.
Did you get in any trouble in San Francisco at the convention you want to tell us about?
No, not really. Most of it was over by then. And honestly, there was about a month where I just, where we just had to kind of
You're all really tan.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we weren't, I'll tell you what, we weren't doing a lot of work for that month after the California primary and until the convention.
You've been spending a lot of time in Iowa now, right? So how's Iowa different now than it was back in 1984?
I've been pleasantly glad to find that it's really the same. I mean, people are so polite, and they take their responsibility in terms of who to vote for so very, very deeply and seriously. A woman said to me the other day in Fairfield, "This is my 3rd time coming to see you." And I said to her, "Well, how am I doing?" She said, "You're doing well. I'm seeing a lot of growth."
They judge in Iowa. All right, next year, 85, this is your graduation from Catholic University. Same parents, different outfit. What were you like as a college student?
I spent a lot more time. I went to Catholic University, great school. It was on the Red Line, which gave me the added benefit was that it was on the Red Line convenient to Gary Hart's presidential headquarters. So I spent a lot of time on the Hart campaign during those years, but I enjoyed Catholic.
What was your degree in?
Political science. Can you believe it?
Hard to believe. Did you go to class a lot?
I did. I had some great classes at Catholic U, not necessarily all in my political science, but the religion classes, the philosophy classes, the things that they required that you take were also some of the most interesting and with some pretty smart and big-brained people.
Were you too busy in college to do anything but politics? Did you do any extracurricular stuff?
I played in a band the whole time. I mean, that's how I worked my way through. I took a lot of great English classes there, too. I could have been an English major, but then I wouldn't have taken a semester off to go to Iowa.
You remember your GPA?
Ooh, 3-point something.
Yeah. Did you graduate with honors?
That's a pretty broad range.
I don't remember, but I thought that an A- was the ideal grade. And,
no higher.
Higher.
Let's move on to let's move on to number 4 here. Big moment for you. There it is, Baltimore, 1999. That's a 36-year-old man becoming mayor of Baltimore. Talk about that day.
Man, he had a lot more hair and was more black. Yeah, that was Inauguration Day. So those are my daughters, Grace and Tara, who spoke that day, and Katie back there holding little William, who's now 17 and stumping for me across Iowa and New Hampshire. That was a big day for us as a city. You know, when I ran for mayor of Baltimore in 1999, it wasn't because our city was doing well.
Right.
It was because we had allowed ourselves to become the most violent, addicted, and abandoned city in America. But we forged a new consensus, and actually I won that election defeating 2 better-known candidates in a majority African-American city, both of whom were African-American, and we won every single council district. And so that was a big day, and every day of that job was hard, and yet I wouldn't trade a single day because we saved a lot of lives.
Given everything that's happened since, and most recently in Baltimore, is that time now for you a political asset or a political liability?
I think as people come to understand it, they'll see it as and so far my experience with people is they see it as an asset, because the 2 yearnings that I hear people voice all the time is the desire for new leadership and getting things done. And so I don't have to tell anybody that Baltimore was not an easy city to govern, right, especially in those times. And notwithstanding the heartbreak of that night of unrest a few months back, we're a much more resilient city than we were, and we'll find a way to forge ahead. Every big city has problems, and that's, I suppose, what attracts me to the work of big cities. It's also where we have the greatest potential to save lives, redeem lives.
Last one we want to get to, you're Johnny Cash here. What's going on there?
The man in black.
Yeah.
They found a picture with sleeves on it, too.
I know. We were looking for the tank top, but they couldn't find it. I think they've been erased from Google.
Yeah, you can tell that's a gubernatorial era.
Do you have a favorite Johnny Cash song?
I like I Walk the Line.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
I also like Ring of Fire.
Yeah.
Not Girl Named Sue.
Not Girl Named Sue.
So lots of people have seen.
In fact, at inauguration, I sang I Walk the Line on the re-election.
Oh, we're going to have to look for that on YouTube. All right, we didn't get to every picture we wanted to, but we got to a lot. Governor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys. This was fun.
You're nice to come in.
Thanks a lot.
We'll be right back. Our waning moments with former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. What's the single best thing about running for president? Don't give us a talking points answer. What's like the real answer?
No, the best thing is just the huge number of really decent people you get to meet all across the country.
And that's a talking point answer.
All right.
How happy are you not to be running against Donald Trump?
That's something to be grateful for.
All right, read right there.
All right, here we are. We are live 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com, but we're on the tube twice a day at 5 and 8.
Until tomorrow, sayonara.